were 26 when you came to Sugar Land, I figured. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you became mayor when you were 30.
I became councilman when I was 28.
All right. Well, before we get into all of that, I just want to give our audience, and some of these people may already know it, but just a little background of Sugar Land's history, some important events and things that took place in Sugar Land's history that led up to incorporation. So I'm going to show some pictures and I'm going to read a little bit here, so bear with me. In 1913, Eldridge and Kempner transitioned from a labor force of mainly convicts they leased from the state to a family-oriented permanent workforce. Under Eldridge's management until his death in 1932, the town flourished with beautiful new neighborhoods, an exemplary school, a well-staffed hospital, churches, and retail outlets. But towards the end of Eldridge's tenure, the Depression hit, affecting the business's bottom line. Yet, the Kempner family kept things afloat with their own money and a loan from the government. To their credit, no one was ever laid off due to the Depression. Along came World War II, changing everything, not only for the country, but also for Sugar Land. Sugar was essential to the war effort. The refinery started running 24/7 to keep up with the demand. Needless to say, the war years saved the refinery and the town. However, the post-war years presented new challenges for the Kempner family and their management team. Improvements and expansion of the refinery and company town had been put on hold during the Depression and war years. Not only was there a lot of catching up to do, change was in the air. Business-wise, to survive, Imperial needed to increase its capacity to meet the demands of the new expanding markets. There were social pressures too. Sugar Land employees had made a first step toward independence by unionizing. And renters of company houses wanted to experience the American dream of home ownership just like the rest of the country. It was from 1945 through the late 1950s that the stage was being set for the company town to incorporate. The refinery underwent a major expansion, and a major expansion meant more employees. However, more employees meant providing more housing for them. The Kempners chose not to invest in building more company houses, an enterprise that was already costing them too much to maintain. Instead of building new rent houses, they sold lots to employees and other individuals so they could build their own homes. In 1947, the first lots were sold in the Belknap and Alcar Lake subdivisions, as well as at the end of Lakeview Drive on the Cleveland Lake Drive cul-de-sac. At about the time you came here, Bill, in 1957, Imperial started selling company houses on the hill. With individual home ownership, the company town now qualified to become incorporated, and the Kempner family could gradually start weaning the town from its beneficence. And so enters Bill Little in 1957.
You want to talk about the houses?
Yes, tell us a little bit about the houses. Well, before we do that, let's talk about the positions that you held at Sugar Land Industries and Imperial Sugar so people kind of get an idea of what your duties were and how it kind of dovetailed in with city government.
Well, I was very fortunate. I started out in the accounting department, and then that was about the time the houses were up for sale, so I was given the opportunity to sell the houses to the employees and the people living in the houses. And then in 1962, joined Sugar Land Industries as an administrative assistant to Tom James, and that also involved the retailing operations and some of the residential lot sales of Belknap and Venetian Estates. And then in 1970, after the industries liquidated, I had an opportunity to go back to the sugar company as manager of industrial relations, and that included the personnel and the labor union, so I had good experience there. And in 1972, I was asked to join the sales department, and went through the ranks in the sales department, and ended up just prior to retirement as senior vice president of sales and marketing. So I was very fortunate to have a varied career and not just in one slot for 36 years. So it helped to have all these knowledge and know the people well too in those various positions.
In our discussions earlier, you told me a couple of, I thought, very funny stories about your experiences with local sugarlanders in their purchase of company homes. And one of them was about when they would come to into your office to purchase.
As I said, one of my duties was the sale of the houses to the individuals. And since the houses were already built, the land couldn't be subdivided into lots and blocks. So the way the houses were sold was that we would go up to a house and face it, and the distance between that house and the next house, half of that would be that side of the lot. And the garages for the houses were split, and there was a single driveway going up to the two garages. And the distance in between the two garages was a lot line for the house on that side. So that's how the houses got divided, and you see some large lots on the hill and some small lots. Excuse me. But in interviewing these people, we would send a letter out to each individual homeowner and say, the price of your house is so-and-so. Please come and see me and we'll talk about it and see if you're interested, because we wanted the residents to have the first option on the house. And if they didn't want it, then some other people could get on the list and buy the house. But about 95%, I think, of the people living in the houses bought them. And we had made arrangements with the Sugar Land State Bank, which is now Frost Bank, that they could provide financing for the houses. And the financing was arranged where the individual would pay $500 down and the balance over 10 years on monthly payments. And we're talking about the average sale of the house and lot somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000. Well, I would present this to the individuals when they would come in and talk about it. And some of the individuals said, well, one guy got out a notebook and he started doing this. And I said, well, you don't like that price? Oh, I said, the price is fine, he said. But, you know, I'm going to pay a lot of interest on that at 5% over 10 years. Would cash be all right? So, I mean, you know, at some of these rent rates that we were looking at here, there was a lot of money salted away that could be used to buy those houses. So we had a lot of cash payments and not too many 10-year loans.
Very interesting. Let's jump into the reasons the local sugarlanders felt it important to incorporate. And I have up here a column from the local Fort Bend Mirror where they interviewed several sugarlanders, and here's one of them that kind of, I think, explains the whole situation. There was a lot of fear and anxiety at the time over a certain issue. It says Mrs. George P. Finn of Alcar Lake Drive is quoted as saying, "I would prefer not to incorporate at all, but if there is any danger of being taken in by any other city, then I would much prefer to be in Sugar Land." Tell us a little bit about that.
This was very true. In the late 50s, it looked like the Oklahoma land grab, the way these cities were annexing land. And Houston was the biggest culprit because it was the biggest city. And the Kempners were very, very afraid that with the assets that were in Sugar Land, the refinery and some Nalco or Visco at that time, some Schlumberger subsidiaries, there was a pretty good tax base here that somebody would put their eye on. And the Kempners were very, very afraid that Sugar Land would not keep its identity. So with the sale of the company houses, they were then out of the housing business, and there were residents and potential taxpayers. And they felt that it was the right time to present the petition for incorporation. And to show you how these annexations happen, while they were drawing up the original boundaries of the city of Sugar Land, which was some 4 square miles, the city of Stafford held a council meeting one night, and they got wind that there was going to be a high school and an administration building on the west side of Dulles Avenue on Sugar Land Industries property. And with the consolidation of the school district a couple of years before that, Missouri City had a school, another school, and Sugar Land had the schools, but Stafford didn't have any schools. So the council in Stafford got the bright idea that we'll just go across Lester Road and we'll annex 80 acres of the school property, and while we're at it, we'll just go up through the power line and we'll take in the rest of that land to the east for of Sugarland Industries. And before we could file that incorporated boundary, we'd lost some acreage, so we figured we better get with this thing pretty quick. And went back and refiled, leaving that land out. And incidentally, the land still in the city of Stafford, with the exception that they did de-annex the school site of 80 acres because they have their own schools now. But that shows you how things were in those days. And the residents of Sugar Creek, some of them live in Sugarland and some of them live in Stafford. And part of the Courtesy Chevrolet is in Stafford and part of it's in Sugarland. And the strip shopping center along 98 at Dulles Avenue is in Stafford. And so it could have really gotten messed up if we hadn't incorporated. And that's what led to the incorporation. And when it was put up for a vote, it was almost unanimous that yes, we incorporate.
It was 11-1 landslide, according to the paper. Very interesting. There weren't too many people that were against it. I think maybe 12 people.